You're listening to Women's Media Center Live with Robin Morgan on 1580 gov.biz radio, a CBS station.
Welcome to Women's Media Center Live. I'm Robin Morgan. You're listening to us on CBS radio station gov.biz, 1580 AM in the Washington, D.C. area, or on the web, WMClive.com, where you can also find links to podcasts of previous shows. And let us hear from you. Call the comment line 347-903-WMC1, or tweet hashtag WMCLive, or email us at womensmediacenterlive@gmail.com. We've got quite a show this week. Today is World AIDS Day, and we'll be talking with two activists, one U.S.-focused and one international, dedicated to issues around women and AIDS. Then we have a two-part, in-depth interview with writer Ursula K. Le Guin, prize-winning author of elegant science fiction, classic fantasy, and other first-rate literature. But first, behind the headlines. My thanks go to word maven Rosalie Maggio for some of the following insights from her forthcoming collaboration with the Women's Media Center, Unspinning the Spin. Is falling off the fiscal cliff anything like falling off the roof? The latter used to be a euphemism for getting one's menstrual period. And all I know is that the current discourse about the deficit and tax reform again induces bleeding in female citizens. If we're discussing reforming the tax code, why is it that those reforms never include the concerns of the majority of the population, women? Is it because taxes are instruments of social as well as economic and infrastructure policy? For instance, mortgage interest deductions encourage home ownership. Marriage taxes reduce the incentive for married women to be employed outside the home. Mimi Abramovitz and Sandra Morgan, no relation, who wrote Taxes Are a Women's Issue, urge women to work for 5 specific reforms. 1. Get marital status removed from the tax code so that the tax unit is the one used in almost all other industrialized nations, where each taxpayer is treated as an individual regardless of household type. 2. Increase child tax credit and apply it to all families with payroll liability. Working poor women get very little help from the child tax credit because it's tied to the amount they pay in income tax, which is low because, of course, their incomes are low. Yet many still have significant payroll tax bills for such things as Social Security and Medicare. In fact, more than 95% of Americans in the bottom 20% of the population pay more in payroll tax than in federal income tax. So applying the tax credit to payroll taxes as well as income taxes would benefit working poor women. 3. Institute paid family leave, funded by unemployment taxes, with incentives for men to take leaves as well. 4. Remove the caps on Social Security taxes and give a Social Security credit for caregiving. While income tax policies encourage women to stay home and care for kids, Social Security then punishes them by entering 0 for each year outside the paid workforce, which means a more meager retirement. 5. Revoke favorable tax treatments for institutions that discriminate against women. Courts long ago ruled that religious schools that bar blacks aren't entitled to tax exemptions, yet many churches that discriminate against women enjoy billions in tax savings through exemptions from income and property taxes, and benefit from donors who can deduct their contributions. These funds, in turn, are used to undermine women's rights. For example, Catholic and Protestant churches are among the biggest contributors to all anti-abortion agendas. Isn't it time to bring such issues out from behind the headlines and into them? Our first guest is Dazon Dixon Diallo. She's the founder and president of SisterLove, Inc., which was started in 1989 as the first women's HIV/AIDS organization in the southeastern U.S. She's also adjunct professor in women's health at Morehouse School of Medicine's Masters of Public Health program in Atlanta. She has a weekly radio program, and generally she's a pioneer in women's HIV/AIDS issues. Welcome, Dazon, to Women's Media Center Live.
Hi, Robin. Thank you for having me.
Oh, I'm very glad that you're here. Since HIV/AIDS is the most common cause, I believe, of death among African American women between age 25 and 34, this problem has not gone away. Give us an update. We're told things are getting better, but how is it going in terms of women and AIDS this World AIDS Day?
Sure, and again, thanks for really honing in on this issue for World AIDS Day, and even more so paying attention to the women's question. And I would say, because I think things are getting better on one front, but the getting better part is just the beginning of getting better. So that's how I would frame my response to that question, is that lots of work has been done in the last few short years with regard to reducing the numbers of HIV infection in the United States, particularly for women. But there's a lot more to be done. I'd say centering around the National HIV/AIDS Strategies released in 2010, which then required different agencies within the Health and Human Services like CDC and SAMHSA, the Substance Abuse Mental Health Services Agency, Human Resources Services Agency responsible for Ryan White, that they've all had to shift gears and focus in more effectively on where the epidemic actually is. So for women, especially women of color, that's actually been a really big benefit, because so many of the women are in those same urban centers and jurisdictions that are carrying the burden of the virus.
Right.
What also has happened is that because for many women in the South, the issues have been even more dire and critical in terms of access to education, health care, the facilitative services like transportation and meals and child care, so that they can get to their medical appointments and be adherent to their treatment, that these things are improving. The data is telling us that things are slowing down, but we don't know exactly yet, because we still don't have a real good picture on what the actual incidence for women is. I mean, we know where we are in terms of the HIV diagnoses, but we don't know where we are in terms of real relative risk for women, because most women's risk is related to whom? Their partners.
I was just going to say.
So that's really where we still are. Now, what's also getting better, Robin, is the fact that science, in terms of being able to bridge biomedical science with what's been at play for the last 30 years in terms of behavioral and social science around prevention, for example, has moved, I would say, light years just in the last couple of years. We know now that if we get women and their partners who are positive into treatment and into care and suppress their virus, then it's almost impossible for them to transmit the virus. They're 96% unlikely to transmit if they're undetectable. That's a prevention tool as well as a quality of life tool for people who are living with HIV. Really important for women who can't always negotiate their own safer sex and risk reduction behaviors.
Right.
So there's also new science that says for people at great risk, like sex workers, like women who are in serial discordant relationships with positive partners, or don't know that their partners are having sex with other people, including men, that they can also take medicine now that will reduce their risk for HIV. Just like that. Doesn't mean they have to give up condoms, because we don't recommend that, but it means that more options are being put into the overall high-impact combination toolbox. So that, I would say, is what makes it better, without having to go into all of the numbers, because the numbers are always 2 or 3 years behind anyway. Right? What people really need to understand is that in this country, we mirror, quite frankly, the epidemic around the world, in the sense that people of color are mostly affected. Women of color are even more disproportionately affected among women in the United States, very much like women in the sub-Saharan Africa region or in the Caribbean.
Right.
And so we have to look at some of those other intersecting issues that drive those risks and vulnerabilities. Violence, top of the list.
Yep.
We still haven't managed to wrap ourselves around the intersection of HIV and violence in a meaningful way, whether through VAWA, for example, through the Violence Against Women's Act,
right,
being more integrated with HIV, and you see what's happening with VAWA in Congress right now. So that's a threat to women with HIV. Having an Affordable Care Act in states that may not expand Medicaid, which would include women who are HIV positive and currently receiving services in Ryan White, would not be able to get that new coverage in those areas. So we've got a lot of policy issues that are not catching up to the science.
Wow. Well, clearly this is part of the work of SisterLove, and it also explains what the U.S. being a microcosm of the epidemic internationally, and women disproportionately affected, and women of color, clearly is one of the reasons why your work with SisterLove is so important, and also why you've begun to go international, I understand.
Yes. Yeah, well, we've actually been doing, and thank you, we've been doing international work for a little over 10 years, primarily in South Africa, expanding with a different program now. And I'll just tell you that it's been different simply because of what the needs are. We have primarily been working at the intersection of economic development and sustainable development for women's organizations on the ground, simply because the voice of women in community is so important and so powerful that we were sharing our own peer modeling of being a women of color organization addressing HIV in the Deep South with women addressing HIV through their own organizing in Southern Africa.
Wow, you know,
and so that's the level of work we've been doing. I mean, at the current time, we're managing a cooperative that's running a dairy farm meant to generate income for the women and their beneficiaries, their organizations.
Dazon, this is so important. What you do, you're connecting the dots. I mean, that this is an economic issue as well. That when women organize about this, they empower themselves in general. That I mean, you know, in other words, the knee bone is connected to the ankle bone, which sometimes I don't think the guys necessarily, you know, cohere around. I don't think
because they consistently remind us that they're the rib bone.
Yeah, that's
and what I mean by that is that the other real big area of vulnerability for women in Africa and in the U.S. and everywhere else is that for the most part, the women most at risk are economically dependent on their male partners.
That's right.
And so they don't have as many options, and they're not as mobile as they need to be in terms of getting access to health and taking care of themselves and protecting themselves.
Tell. We've only got a minute or so left. Tell our listeners how they can get involved, how they can best be of help. Tell about the website.
Absolutely. So, SisterLove, let me just start out with that. SisterLove can be found on the web at sisterlove.org. We're also on Facebook, and follow us on Twitter. Keep up with all of our updates and announcements and activities and events. Lots of programs and projects coming forward in the way of prevention as well as treatment and care for women. I think what's most important is at an individual level, people still need to recognize that anyone who is sexually active and not protecting themselves every time can be at risk. So get tested, know your status, and help others in your family and communities. And anytime you see health policy, recognize that is also an HIV impact, and respond accordingly, whether it's a sign-on, whether it's a petition, whether it's a chance to go and visit with your legislators. They have to hear from the electorate, not from the top down. And that's where I think is so revolutionary about the current time we're in, with the current administration that we have, that the community organizing is coming out of the White House. And I'm just thankful that we're able to join somewhere with the broader community in the middle from the grassroots.
Me too. Thank you so much for being with us and for all the wonderful knowledge in your head and the activism that you do. Thanks a lot for being with us on Women's Media Center Live.
Well, thanks so much, Robin, for having us.
We'll take a short break here. I'm Robin Morgan, and this is Women's Media Center Live. Next, what are women doing globally to protect themselves and to fight HIV/AIDS? We'll find out in just a minute. After Hurricane Sandy, parts of the East Coast have returned to normal, but others won't see normal again for quite some time. One group getting volunteers and aid supplies to those who need it is called Occupy Sandy. Made up of a coalition of Occupy Wall Street activists, community organizers, and technologists, Occupy Sandy is using social media and other software tools to identify and quickly respond to urgent needs among the hardest-hit communities. You can help. To donate or to volunteer, visit occupysandy.org.
You're listening to Women's Media Center Live with Robin Morgan on 1580 gov.biz radio, a CBS station.
Welcome back. Our next guest, Paula Donovan, is co-executive director of AIDS-Free World, an international advocacy organization that works to promote more urgent and effective global responses to HIV/AIDS. Also, she's a women's rights activist, one of the major energies behind the founding of the new United Nations agency, UN Women. Welcome, Paula, to Women's Media Center Live.
Thank you, Robin. It's a pleasure to be here.
Well, it's a pleasure to have you here. We've talked with our first guest about the U.S. focus, but you're working in the international realm and have been for a long time. So give us a quickie update on where are we with women and AIDS globally. Are things getting better, worse, status quo? What?
Well, we're at a very strange point in time. The global response to AIDS has now taken this sort of cheerleader tone. It sounds as though there's terrific news. We're almost there. We've just about gotten this thing under control. And they are able to spin things that way by basically ignoring what's happening to women and the fact that things are not getting better for women at all. The statistics are frightening when you look at trends. If you're focused entirely on what can be fixed with drugs or commodities, then you can pretty much spin some statistics that look pretty good and pretty hopeful. But that requires ignoring trends like the fact that women every single year make up a larger proportion of people overall who are HIV positive. So now, so now women have overtaken men. They make up more than 50% worldwide of people living with HIV, and it gets so much worse when you look at the sub-Saharan Africa, which everyone refers to as the epicenter of the pandemics. And there, the new infections last year, the final numbers aren't quite out yet, but new infections in sub-Saharan Africa last year were somewhere around 1.8 million. Of those, 72% were in women and girls ages 15 to 24.
Oh, my God.
Yeah. And these are trends that are just completely ignored in the World AIDS Day 2012 news stories.
What can we do, Paula, or this is what you do, I guess, all the time, what can we do to make them not be ignored?
Well, there are a couple of things. There are a million things, I guess, that you can actually do about women and AIDS. But to stop this trend of just overlooking women's issues, one is quite a serious problem, and that is that frequently now when you flip through reports about HIV, we noticed this at the International AIDS Conference in Washington, D.C. In July of this year, which attracted about 25,000 delegates. The focus is obsessively on the prevention of what's called prevention of mother-to-child transmission. I've taken issue with that for years, with that phrasing, because it points the finger of blame at women. But
I was just going to say
call
that.
Yeah, I call it vertical transmission, the prevention of vertical transmission, but the powers that be say that that's too confusing. People won't understand that. But this obsessive attention to prevention of vertical transmission, and this is how we're going to get to zero infections, to an AIDS-free generation, and so forth, by preventing transmission from women to babies. Now, that's a laudable goal, but it's such a minute fraction of the problems that women are facing. I mean,
well, it also focuses on women solely in their roles as mothers.
Exactly, in their roles as mothers and in their roles as vectors of the virus. Right. The problem of vertical transmission is obviously quite an important one, but it's not a women's issue. It's a children's issue, preventing infections in children, and it has replaced attention to all the other women's issues, the issues that affect women and girls. So it's not unusual to flip through reports and find chapters that are devoted to women and AIDS, entirely focused on prevention of vertical transmission. Mm-hmm. And statistically, it makes absolutely no sense, because sub-Saharan Africa has, many millions of women, and about something like 0.3% of those women are HIV positive and pregnant in any given year. Mm-hmm. So to focus exclusively on
what about the rest?
Women who are posing a potential risk to their infants is ignoring a huge range of other problems. Yeah. One of the main things that we need to do in answer to your question, Robin, about how do we fix this?
Yes, exactly. What next?
Is to address another really terrifying trend, which is the domination of men, the dominance of men in the global response. So, just two examples. During the International AIDS Conference, there was quite a large and well-publicized session that was co-hosted by the World Bank and USAID, and this has been going on for a couple of years now. And it was global thought leaders, so-called global thought leaders, were asked to come together to debate major challenges in science, policy, practice on HIV, and they were streamed live, and there was an enormous audience, and the focus of attention was on investments in HIV into the future. Is this a sound investment? And there were 11 of these global thought leaders convened to opine on this issue, and all 11 of them were men.
Oh my God.
A few months before that, the Harvard School of Public Health had convened something called AIDS at 30 to look at the pandemic over the past 30 years and do a critical analysis and figure out what have we learned and how should we move into the next 30 years. Their advisory council for that AIDS at 30 effort was made up of 19 people, of which one was a woman. So if we can't get women at the table when we're assessing what we've done before and planning what we should do in the future about the global AIDS pandemic, then obviously women's issues are simply going to drop off of the agenda.
We've only got a minute or so left, but talk a little bit about the AIDS-free world and what it actually does.
Well, AIDS-free world tries to sort of reroute the global response to HIV and get people to focus on the parts of the global response that are not urgent or effective enough. And of course, any discrimination against women that isn't being addressed is a huge part of the problem, and we try to focus on that. So we train our attention on everything from sexual violence to discrimination against women with disabilities and a whole range of issues. It's not entirely focused on women. It's focused on all the groups that are thrown out to the margins and forced there by discriminatory laws and practices, and even by the programs and agenda setting and funding of the international community, the UN and others.
It's interesting because both you and our first guest, Dazon, talk about making the connections, which seems perfectly evident to me. I mean, whether it's with violence against women, whether it's with poverty, whether it's with whatever, that we connect the dots, and it seems so difficult for men to do that somehow. I mean, in the AIDS community as well, it's shocking,
Yeah, absolutely.
Well,
there's a funny line ironic line in the latest UN AIDS global report that says, in effect, in 2011, countries pledged to eliminate gender-based abuse and violence. Efforts to accelerate progress towards this goal continue to be undermined by the persistence of gender-based violence.
Well, hello. Oh, Paula, thank you for the work you do. People can find the NGO. I take it online, and they can help and get involved, and I hope they do. And thank you for being with us on Women's Media Center Live on World AIDS Day. Thanks so much.
Thank you, Robin.
And now it's time for Verbal Karate. 2 more insights on tax lingo. Death tax. When conservatives tried to repeal the estate tax, thus benefiting the wealthy far more than those without, large estates, voters didn't like it. So conservatives came up with the term death tax. Since everybody was going to die eventually, it would seem like a good idea to get rid of the death tax. But this term isn't accurate. Death is not what's being taxed. Property is taxed. Death tax as a phrase should only be used as an example of spinning. Then there's tax relief. By dinning tax relief into our brains, the right wing has indoctrinated us to think of taxes as onerous, dreadful things. But taxes buy us roads and schools and police protection and firefighting work and emergency services and the internet and dams and bridges and defense systems. When taxes are fair, which they're not at present since the wealthiest pay the smallest percentage, but when they're fair, we get a lot for our money. So be on the lookout for death tax and for tax relief. It's time for another pause. I'm Robin Morgan here with Women's Media Center Live. We'll be back to welcome a woman who stands tall in American literature, the wise, great storyteller, Ursula K. Le Guin. Don't go away.
If you ever need an organ transplant, you will probably die before you get one. Thousands of Americans die waiting every year. You can improve your odds by joining LifeSharers, and it's free. Visit lifesharers.org or call 888-ORGAN-88. LifeSharers puts organ donors first. When you join LifeSharers, you get preferred access to the organs of other members. This could literally save your life. Join LifeSharers today. There's no age limit, parents can enroll their minor children, and no one is excluded due to any pre-existing medical condition. Call 888-ORGAN-88 or visit lifesharers.org. That's LifeSharers.org. LifeSharers. It's free. It could save your life.
You're listening to Women's Media Center Live with Robin Morgan on 1580 gov.biz radio, a CBS station.
And we're back. Ursula K. Le Guin has published more than 60 books of fiction, fantasy, science fiction, children's literature, poetry, drama, criticism, and translation, and she's the multiple winner of the highest awards in numerous fields. Among her honors are a National Book Award, 5 Hugo and 5 Nebula Awards, the Kafka Award, a Pushcart Prize, and an award from the American Academy of Arts and Letters. I'm proud to call her a friend. And we spoke by phone between New York and Ursula's home in Portland, Oregon. Welcome, Ursula, to Women's Media Center Live.
Good morning, Robin.
Well, I'm so glad that you're here. I want to start with talking about this specific new genre that I have discovered. It is an entire genre based on the question, what does Ursula K. Le Guin really write? Does she write science fiction? Does she write speculative fiction? Does she write non-realism or realism or fantasy ad infinitum? And I have discovered the answer to this question. I think she writes literature. Tell me.
Well, I was going to answer, does she write, realism, non-realism? I was just going to say yes.
That's another very good answer.
but I'll accept literature. Yeah.
What is this specifically an American disease, this categorization? I think of the Latin Americans with magical realism, with Borges, with Allende. I think of the Europeans with Kafka and Hesse, and the Brits, my God, from Swift and C.S. Lewis through Tolkien and Woolf. What is the problem we seem to be having here?
I think the problem stems from kind of early modernist theory, which sort of declared that realism was the only thing that made literature, and anything fantastic was essentially for children, was kind of outside the pale. And Americans tend to take these things awfully literally.
Yeah. What do you do with Shakespeare?
And then, of course, as fantasy and science fiction got established as successful commercial genres, that lowered them in the estimation of many of the critics and professors.
Because Tolkien is taught as literature in Britain. I mean, but there's a lot of Brits who sneer at him. Like, he can't be for literature because children can read it, which would include books like Huckleberry Finn and Kim, but never mind. Yeah. It's very irritating, and I think we should mount a campaign against critics and booksellers who categorize this way. It's completely arbitrary, and it has not. Well, you called it this wonderful thing.
I've been running that campaign for decades, Robin, and the thing is, you must, I think. There is a legitimate distinction commercially. There are people who read realism don't want to find themselves suddenly stumbling into science fiction without being warned.
I think they should.
Identify books by genre is okay. To judge them by genre is what's wrong. Is to say, if it's science fiction, it can't possibly be good.
Yeah.
If it's good, it can't possibly be science fiction. That's That's just arbitrary, as you say, and stupid.
And it is an imposition and against literature. It really is. It
is indeed.
It stinketh.
What are you going to do with a writer like Michael Chabon, who just waltzes across all those genre distinctions happily?
Well, I would argue that the great writers always do, and to me, you're one of them. But I have 3 questions from 3 Le Guinians. Now, you may wonder what a Le Guinian is, but a Le Guinian...
they live on the planet Le Guin.
That's absolutely correct. Just like, remember they used to say about Graham Greene's work that he wrote about a particular landscape that was Greenland? Well, Le Guinians inhabit Laguinia. And one question is from my son, who has wondered this since he was 13 years old. It is about the great teacher of Ged in the Earthsea books, and he whose name is followed with the silent. And how is it a hard G or a soft G in pronouncing Ogion?
I say Ogion.
Ogion.
Ogion. Yeah, the G's as in Ged are generally hard.
I thought since Ged was that maybe Ogion would be too, but I didn't know, and you should know.
In the dreadful movie they made of it here, they managed to call him Ogion.
Because
they didn't bother to ask the author.
Why would they do that?
The language she invented,
Why would they ever do such a thing?
Oh, well.
Yeah. All right. Now, the second question is much more complex and profound. It quotes you as having once said that the creative adult is the child who survived. And the question is, how did you save the child in yourself, and did you ever lose it?
No, I think most artists I think part of their survival as artists is the survival of the child in them. I don't mean that they're childish.
No, I know.
At all. And if let's not get off on the inner child, because that really spooks me.
You mean...
Although I think originally what was meant was simply that kind of not losing touch with your own origins, with who you have always been. You know. The
you-ness of you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. Because, as soon as you see a baby, you realize, my God, it's a person. It takes very little time for the little newborn to, look at you from far, far away, and you realize that's a person looking out at you.
Yes, yeah.
And that's the you-ness.
And the quality of play also, of serious, real, wow, play, I think is needed.
Yeah, exactly.
If you lose that as an artist.
Kids are allowed to play, and so are artists.
Yeah,
exactly.
That's the good stuff about being an artist, yeah. You may starve to death, but you're going to play as you do it. And,
right.
And the third question is about your magnificent translations. The great Lao Tzu that you have done, which is my special love, and the Angelica Gorodischer work, Kalpa, and others. This is from a writer friend who herself, English is not her mother tongue, so she is very concerned about translation. Is there a special satisfaction, and what is it in translation for you, since you're such an amazing writer yourself?
Oh, I love it. I love translating because the author of the work did the really hard work. The author dug it up out of the earth and refined it into gold, and all I have to do is try to carry some of the gold over into my language. And there is an element of discovery and creation in it, but it's also almost like a word game. It has the satisfaction of solving a puzzle.
Yeah. So it's about language.
Brood and brood and brood about a word, and then maybe sometimes that's how to say it. So I love translating. I always have.
And you once said that your plotting is not your strong point. Characters and language are. So this takes that away from your responsibility.
That's right. They figured out the plot and the characters, and the author does all the hard work, the really hard work. Translation it can be laborious, and of course I am a very lucky person. I only translate what I want to when I want to do it. A professional translator has to translate stuff they don't even like.
Yeah,
that is not.
That would be dreary.
That's not fun. But what I do is fall in love with something, and therefore want to know it more closely. And the way to know something closely is to put it into my own language.
Either that or teach it. Yes, which is in effect the same thing.
Which I have not. I'm not good at teaching literature. I've tried it, and I don't have the knack.
Well,
but I do have some knack for this falling in love with the text and bringing it over into English.
I think your book's about writing, steering the craft, I think is an amazing guidepost.
Well, that's about writing, but it's not so much about reading. I am awed by people who can. I had teachers who taught me how to read, and I'm very grateful. And I mean all the way up through graduate school.
Yeah, which is a skill in itself. It is.
Yeah, absolutely.
I want to ask one more question in this segment, which I will be drawn and quartered if I do not ask, which is about the feminist influence on your work, notably in Left Hand of Darkness, which I think was written out of sheer imagination before you became a feminist, but I'm not sure. But it goes straight through Tehanu and, oh my God, Lavinia, which you published right when I was trying to finish a novel, and which absolutely paralyzed me. It was so brilliant.
Well, you shouldn't read novels when you're writing one.
Well, now I know.
That's very dangerous.
Thank you very much. Now I know. But yeah, talk a little bit about that. The feminist influence on your work.
Oh, well, I've always called myself a feminist, I guess, but the word has changed its meaning several times radically during my long lifetime. In 1968, when I was writing Left-Hand of Darkness, I would have called myself a feminist because I had been brought up, thanks to my mother, on Virginia Woolf's feminist nonfiction.
Yes.
A Room of One's Own and Three Guineas. That's pretty heady stuff for a teenager.
It's good stuff. Yes, it's great.
And then, after all, the American feminism and French feminism, there were some important texts came out in the early 60s, and I hadn't read them. And I was aware that the construction of gender, although we didn't have that phrase yet, was being questioned. Mm-hmm. And so I had a lot of help to get started on writing this book where I deconstruct gender rather radically. And then when well, very briefly, when feminism began to declare kind of that motherhood was sort of a bad thing, I thought I couldn't be a feminist because I had 3 kids. And I felt I'd done the right thing in having them, and I was very fond of them.
We never did that, It was a media myth.
But there were, you know what I mean? There was
yes, I do.
Friendliness. I was a housewife, for God's sake.
Yes,
with
I know.
3 kids.
Exactly.
And I was not supposed to be a housewife with 3 kids.
Right.
So I felt like I couldn't be a feminist for a while. Then I got wise, and then all the wonderful the literary feminists came along and kind of told me what to read, and all the women writers I hadn't read and so on. And so I came back happily. But now when you say you're a feminist, now how you are understood, the understanding of the word has changed again. So it's very tricky.
Yeah. Well, the female characters, and for that matter, the male characters in your work and how they've changed, even let's say in the Earthsea books, you can see the consciousness shift and change and grow. And
that was literally consciousness raising happened to me about the time that I finished the 3rd book of Earthsea, and then it took 17 years of kind of putting it away and letting it cook in my unconscious and thinking about other things consciously before I could write the 4th book and tell the same story but from a different point of view.
I'll say we're gonna have to pause here and take a break, but we'll be right back. This is Women's Media Center Live, the talk show with a brain, and I'm Robin Morgan. We'll return in just a minute with more from Ursula K. Le Guin. "40 years ago this January, the Supreme Court decision Roe v. Wade guaranteed women's right to choose abortion. In 1977, Congress ended this right for the most vulnerable women when it passed the Hyde Amendment, banning Medicaid coverage of abortion. The National Network of Abortion Funds works to restore coverage while helping women pay for the procedures they need. You can help too. To learn more or donate so no woman is forced to carry an unwanted pregnancy to term, go to fundabortionnow.org.
You're listening to Women's Media Center Live with Robin Morgan on 1580 gov.biz radio, a CBS station.
And we're back again. We're talking with one of the major writers in English living today, Ursula K. Le Guin. I want to talk about the 3 new books, or the 2 books in 1 and 2 volumes that have just come out that are quite wonderful. The prose is The Unreal and the Real, Selected Stories. Volume 1, Where on Earth, and Volume 2, I love it, Outer Space, Inner Lands. And also the new book of poems, which is a new and selected, called Finding My Elegy, which has your best poetry to date in it and is absolutely sublime, poet to poet. Wow, Ursula, this time you really kicked out the jams. So have you been going around and talking to people about these wonderful books? And
Yeah, to some extent. I don't travel much anymore, but
that's smart.
But I talk as much as possible.
When you travel, you get good stuff. Changing Planes was a wonderful book about sitting in airports and what happens then. But let's talk about the books of stories. How you chose them, which you discuss in one of the introductions, is hilarious and in exactly the same tone we've come to expect from you, which is wise and unsentimental and loving and hilariously funny and then hits you with a double kick. Well,
you want me to sort of repeat that? It's just that nobody would help me select them. I thought I would have an editor sort of pouncing over and saying, "No, we have to have this one," and so on. And actually, Gavin and Kelly, who are Small Beer Press, they did insist on just two stories being in, very short ones. But mostly what I was faced with, just I don't know how. I've written well over 100 short stories, and how do you pick?
Yeah, how do you pick?
You know. So I just I would put them in the heaps and say, no, that can go out, but that one can't go out, until I finally got the heaps small enough. You know, and then I had to sort them and which one goes where. Mm-hmm. You know, and if that's science fiction, or who cares? And that it was an extremely confused process.
Well, it doesn't show that. It seems organic and natural, and of course that's here. And I haven't yet. I'm not completely through them, but I haven't yet discovered an omission that has me outraged, writing you a long and very cranky letter as why this favorite one is not in. So far so good. And
good.
And the breaking of them up into where on earth and the outer space, inner lands, it was just absolutely brilliant. So it satisfies, I'm sure, the genre folks, but it also shows the span of your reach, which is considerable.
Well, good, because that is precisely what I was hoping to somehow do.
Yeah, well, it works. And now talk about Finding My Elegy, which is a new and selected poems from a number of the previous books, and plus these extraordinary new poems that you've been writing all this time, when you were complaining to me that I can't find my story, and all the while you were turning out these staggering poems, Ursula.
Well, but of course, you know, poems come all at once.
Yep.
And then, of course, you may work on them and come back and saw on the darn things for months or years, but there is a satisfaction in writing a longer piece of prose fiction to me that is such a different satisfaction, because you come back to it day after day and it's there to be worked on. Mm-hmm. And it wants to be told, you know. And but I've sort of lost that. It's apparently an energy thing of being in my mid-80s. But the poems still come sometimes. And I do want to mention what you wouldn't know from the book, is that I belong to a group of working poets, a little, peer group of poets for years now.
Yes.
With several of us have been in the group for quite a long time, and that almost every poem in the last half of that book, and some in the first half, come out of that group, and many of them were written to assignments that we give each other in the group, mm-hmm. and they were worked over by the group so that I could take them home and I see what's wrong. I just want to say this because I think for poets who work in solitude, some of them want that, but for some, to get into a group like this is just kind of life-giving.
The workshop experience.
A workshop, although a homegrown workshop.
Yes.
One thing it does is it makes you write a poem that month.
Precisely.
Because you got to bring one.
Precisely. Yeah, I have an artists' night group, which is actually mixed arts, music as well as poetry.
Oh, neat.
But it is pretty damn neat. You're right, and it, if for no other reason, and there are other reasons for the deadline, and it makes you come with something new. It's too humiliating to say I have nothing this week. Oh my, or this month. But
yeah, you feel kind of inadequate. Yeah.
Well, I know what you mean about long fiction or longer fiction, or rather fiction as opposed to poetry, because it's a whole world that you inhabit and you can return to, whereas a poem can sweep you off your feet like a tsunami or a tornado, and then be done with you.
And a short story can do that too. You know, a really short story may have to be written in a breath, as it were. And if you don't write it then, it's gone, like a poem.
I have not written stories.
Grab it as it flies thing with short writing. And that makes it scary but exciting.
Well, these poems are something else, and finding my elegy, even if people do not read poetry, is please treat yourself to this book. People should also know, and we've only got a minute or so left now, that you blog, and you blog the way that you write, which is great fun to read, and also then so there's this sudden little profound hit, and you think, well, wow. You
know who taught me that I might be able to blog? Who
taught you?
Is the great Nobel Prize winner José Saramago, the Portuguese novelist. He blogged when he was 86 and 87. He was blogging.
Wow!
And I thought, hey, I could try.
You can do that. Damn right.
Nothing like having a good model, you know.
Well, it's so wonderful whether you're blogging about the new acquiring of being recatted with a new cat in the house, or whether it's the politics of the endless election that we just survived. It's a wonderful blog, and it's a literary blog, by which I don't mean it's just good for you. I mean it's fun, but it's also smart, and it's at www.ursulakleguin.com. I got that right?
You got that right. Mm-hmm.
And it also lists appearances that you'll be making or readings that you'll be doing. I see that there were none in New York, and that crushed my soul, but I'm glad for you that you don't have to travel.
Well, you live too far away, Robin.
I know. Well, I'll have to get out there again. That's all. I'll have to come to Portland. You know, that's all there is to it. Oh, Ursula, thank you so much for doing this. It was
thanks for
it was
having me.
Absolutely lovely, and I'm very grateful, and I can't wait to see what comes out of you next.
Me neither.
Now it's time for Fighting Words. One of the great Nina Simone civil rights songs is called Mississippi Goddamn. I will not inflict my singing on you, but the refrain is, Alabama's got me so upset, Tennessee made me lose my rest, and everybody knows about Mississippi Goddamn. Meaning that bad as things are in many places, there's usually one place that gives new dimensions to things being bad. For women, that place is Saudi Arabia. I tread carefully regarding cultural and religious differences, but I insist that practicing cultural relativism on human rights is stupid, lazy, and in fact disrespectful of people in those other cultures. How ridiculous it is to say, "Oh, you stone women for teaching girls to read? Well, not up to me to judge. There's no right or wrong. The hell there's not." The Taliban's Afghanistan was a poor, brutal, gender apartheid state that the world finally confronted, not, of course, during decades of feminists trying to point out women's suffering there, but after 9/11. All the while, Saudi Arabia has been a rich, brutal, gender apartheid state, founded and sustained by fanatic followers of Wahhabism who also export their extremist version of Islam. But the kingdom oozes so much oil that the world allows this absolute monarchy to be an absolute patriarchy. Women are kept permanent minors who at any age can't go to school, get a job, travel domestically or internationally, see a doctor, sign legal documents, go to court, start or run a business, get married or divorce, or have custody of their own children because of the guardianship laws. Women can't do these things and more without the physical and or written permission of a male guardian. If no adult male relative is available, a woman must get permission from her male child as young as age 7. Women also have to wear the full abaya. Forced marriage and child marriage are common. Sex segregation is the law. Female unemployment is around 30%. And, though nowhere mentioned in secular or religious law, driving is forbidden to women, something that even the Taliban never required. But now, just recently, on November 22nd, Agence France-Presse reported that Saudi women are being monitored by an electronic system that tracks cross-border movements. Guardians are receiving phone texts informing them when women under their custody leave the country, even if the two are traveling together. Try doing this to a group on the basis of religion or ethnicity. There would be outraged howls from the U.S. and the UN. Personally, I find it dizzying. Men panicked at modernity and terrified of women employing advanced technology to imprison women in 8th century lives. An upcoming interview on this program will feature Wajeda al-Huwaider, the remarkable Saudi feminist leader. We need to figure out what to do about Saudi Arabia, goddamn. And that's it for this week. You've been listening to us on CBS station 1580 gov.biz AM radio in Washington, D.C., and on the web at WMClive.com, which also has podcasts of previous shows. Remember to email us at womensmediacenterlive@gmail.com. Portions of this program were taped earlier. Views expressed here do not represent the WMC. Here's the family for Women's Media Center Live. WMC President and for this program Executive Producer Julie Burton, Senior Producer Crystal Williams Chancellor, Technical Director Michelle Kinsey Bruns, Production Assistant Nora Eakin, and our founding sponsor Regina Kulik Scully. I'm Robin Morgan. Thanks for being with us. Join us next Saturday, 11 a.m., when we'll explore the pleasures and perils of teaching journalism and talk with the leading feminist of, yes, Saudi Arabia, here at the Talk Show with a Brain, Women's Media Center, Live.
Women's Media Center Live is brought to you by Regina Kulik Scully, our founding sponsor. You're listening to Women's Media Center Live with Robin Morgan on 1580 gov.biz radio, a CBS station.